Power. Oh, a little technical difficulties. I think we fixed it. There you go. Some current events in the news today. The storm has hit the Bay Area and waking up today. Closed roads, strewn debris, power outages, and strong system arrive. Another strong system arrives Monday. Stay off the road if you can, please. And as you can tell, folks, we're having some backlash from that storm right here in Oakland, California, where we're streaming live. Footballer Damar Hamilin that went down on the field is showing signs of improving, which is hopeful news from his family regarding his current condition. Let's all hold him up in prayer. This month, we celebrate Martin Luther King with a national day on January 16th, hashtag Martin Luther King. This month is yet another anniversary of Kobe Bryant's fatal helicopter accident, which killed his daughter and several other passengers, including children, hashtag Kobe Bryant. KinFolx, coffee, wine, culture, see the walls filled with art, and let's turn this into a spot to uplift one another and bring a sense of community. Now, open starting January 5th, 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. And that's tomorrow, January 5th, 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Join our friend of the show, Creighton Davis, and his partners, Nicole and Tunde, at 1951 Telegraph Avenue in Oakland, California. Visit their Instagram at KinFolx Coffee, hashtag KinFolx Coffee. This week's Black Business Roundtable Thumbs Up goes to dun, 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 the men and women helping to keep us safe during this wild weather event pounding California. And I mean pounding California. Utility services, transportation services, fire, police, too many agencies to name. Thank you and thumbs up for you getting out there in that devastating and stormy weather to keep our city's services going. Thank you. This week's Black Business Roundtable Thumbs Down goes to dun, 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 those individuals who are trying to overturn an election here in Oakland that we have had ranked choice voting for over 10 years, and there's not been a problem until this year. So we hope that it works out. I was on the phone on a Alameda County Democratic Central Committee meeting with the Alameda County Board of Supervisors for 4 hours, listening to them hopefully come up with something to resolve the feeling that people's votes aren't being counted. And I will keep you abreast of that. So don't receive the thumbs down in hashtag the town. Do better. You are welcome to come and talk with us about it and make it right. Hashtag BBRT NAUGHTY LIST 2022. Today we have our first guest of 2023, starting with Allyssa Victory Esq, whom is starting a twice monthly segment with the Black Business Roundtable. Stay tuned for her first segment today at 4:30, and it's going to be called Victory Corner. Next up is longtime Oakland resident and friend of the show, Mr. Robert L. Harris Esq, discussing the community coming together after an election, winners and losers, and where we go from here. Audience, we have to unite. I don't know if you see behind me the picture here, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X uniting together as one. When the election is over, we form a bond and get things done in our communities, in our city. Thank you. Here in Alameda County and the city of Oakland, California, we have had several races to contend with the Alameda County District Attorney, Mayor of Oakland, Oakland City Council, and Mayor of Alameda. So let's get started this first Thursday of the 2023 New Year. And my co-host joining me shortly, Dr. Ashley Coleman, as we give you the scoop from Oakland, California, right here on the Black Business Roundtable, January 5th, 2023 edition. And I'd like to start off by saying I need Dr. Ashley today. It's been a wild 2022. I need my therapeutic Thursday. Woosah, woosah, woosah. My co-host and show guests today include Therapeutic Thursday check-in with our, and you see I've been working on that this year, audience, with our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology, tenured and immediate past department chair, assistant professor of psychology at University of the West. Welcome back, Dr. Ashley. We'll see you shortly. Allyssa Victory Esq, a civil rights leader, educator, and licensed attorney serving across the Bay Area and state of California. Visit her website at victoryforoakland.wordpress.com or her Instagram at victoryforoakland. And last and certainly not least, Mr. Robert L. Harris Esq, retired Vice President of PG&E of Oakland, California. And now for the national political highlights. The Republicans are trying to do another Herschel Walker and pitting Black Congressman Jeffries against their now Black candidate due to the debacle. And that is the debacle. I don't know if you've been watching this, but they look terrible. It does not look good for the Republicans trying to get a Speaker of the House. Due to the debacle of not choosing a Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy is not, after 10 rounds of votes, holding a gavel. The Democrats made their vote with Congressman Jeffries. Anyone need more popcorn? As I will take extra butter on mine as we, the American people, watch this ongoing saga. Is this what Republicans call governing when they can't seem to find a solution to this problem? To top it off, tomorrow is January 6th, the insurrection anniversary. Doesn't that seem fitting? Chaos once again on January 6th. Well, Republicans, what say you? And now, the news of the... Oh, I see her backstage. I'm getting excited.
Hi, Doug. Happy New Year.
New Year. Oh, I love that hat.
Thank you. I like the glass. I like the look. Oh, yeah. Powerful background.
You know, before you give the news of the day, I put this up for one specific reason. We have to come together after an election and work for the betterment of our community, of our neighborhood, and of our city. And to that end, and now the news of the day, Dr. Ashley, please take us away.
Thank you, Doug. And A happy 2023 to our audience. It's so good to be with you again. The news of the day, of course, comes courtesy of the Equal Justice Initiative, who produces a daily calendar of historical events. On this day, January 5th, 1923, a white mob destroyed a Black community of Rosewood, Florida. And so a mob of over 200 white men attacked the Black community in Rosewood, Florida, killing over 30 Black women, men, and children, burning the town to the ground and forcing all survivors to permanently flee Rosewood. At the start of the year, on January 1st of 1923, in Sumner, Florida, a young married white woman named Fannie Taylor claimed she had been assaulted by Jesse Hunter, a Black man who had escaped a prison chain gang. And though there was no evidence against Mr. Hunter, local white men launched a manhunt in Rosewood, a nearby town of approximately 200 Black people. And on the 2nd of January 1923, a mob of white men kidnapped, tortured, and lynched Mr. Sam Carter, a Black craftsman from Rosewood, on suspicion that he had helped Jesse Hunter escape. And a mob of white men continued to terrorize Rosewood, searching for Mr. Hunter, and Black residents armed themselves in defense. Late on the night of January 4th, again, a white posse assembled and fired into the home of Black Rosewood resident, Mr. Sylvester Carrier, whom they suspected of harboring Mr. Hunter. In their attack, they actually killed an elderly woman, and a gunfight between Carrier and the mob lasted into the early morning, again, killing people on both sides. Of course, outraged residents fought back, and the posse eventually left the scene to regroup and returned with more men. And so on January 5th, a mob of between 200 to 300 white men attacked Rosewood, killing men, women, and children on site and burning the town to the ground. Black residents hid in the woods and fled by train to Gainesville, Florida, never to return. And survivors later recounted that Fannie Taylor had made false accusations against Mr. Hunter to conceal her extramarital affair with a white man. Hard history, but we do understand the legacy of bearing false witness and how Black people, and especially Black men, have suffered on account of that. Doug?
Dr. Ashley, no one better articulates our past history than you. And that audience is the reason why the psychological effect of knowing what has happened in the past. A lot of young kids don't understand how fortunate we are as Black people to not fear the things that our parents, our grandparents, and our great grandparents had to fear more than 100 years ago, and as early as 75 years ago, and possibly 60, and maybe even 50. So, Dr. Ashley, from the bottom of my heart and audience, this is why I continuously advocate. You should get psychological help, mental therapy, because you may not think that there's a problem in your life with having an understanding of just being Black in America and how to deal with people who still are having challenges of integration and non-segregation. To that end, you see, I'm working on my rapping.
I see it.
To that end, I'd like to, audience, we're going to start off this year with, once again, our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology, for her mental therapeutical Thursday words. Thank you, Dr. Ashley. Please take it away.
Thank you, Doug. And again, greetings, audience. Welcome to Therapeutic Thursdays. I hope you had an enjoyable holiday season. and a nice transition into 2023. This evening, I want to talk to you about vicarious / secondary trauma. And it's ironic that I'm talking about this after recounting the painful history of the terrorization of Black people in Rosewood, but I wanted to bring it to modern day times. So, as many of our diehard listeners know, and if you can see me or hear me, I'm squeezing my stress ball, which is in the shape of a football. Sports is something that I love and enjoy. And like many of us on Monday night, saw Damar Hamlin, safety for the Buffalo Bills, clinging to life after a collision and after suffering cardiac arrest. And I wanted to share about vicarious trauma, which is the witnessing or hearing of something life-threatening and having an impact on us. Not only was seeing Mr. Hamlin in distress hard for me, but for many of us, for the past 3 years, given that we're now in January 2023, for the past 3 years, we have been bombarded with death, topics of death and illness, sudden death, whether that's in our family or colleagues or a friend of a friend, or seeing in the corner of our news, of news proceedings of the numbers of people contracting COVID and dying from COVID globally. And I wanted to bring it also to Black Business Roundtable. We're also hearing of threats of job loss. It seems like major companies from the fall to now have announced tens of thousands of layoffs. And so when we hear potential loss of life, threat of loss of life, or smaller T traumas that are also impactful, loss of jobs or potential loss of security or housing, these things can bring up symptoms in us. And so I kind of wanted to review them just to put into the arsenal. This could mean signs of vicarious trauma: anger, irritation, being startled or jumpy, overeating or undereating, having difficulty falling asleep, being worried, also dreaming about certain things and experiences, a diminished joy from things that typically were fulfilling, feeling trapped, diminished feelings of satisfaction or personal accomplishment, intrusive thoughts, feelings of hopelessness, or aggravation. And again, vicarious trauma can occur at any time that we hear a loved one in distress or we hear about something upsetting. And so, as we talked about depression and anxiety and seasonal affective disorder and panic attacks, vicarious trauma also disproportionately affects Black and Brown people. To be honest, while I appreciate the news of the day, one of the things I was going to incorporate is also positive things of the news of the day, because even sometimes hearing about what our people have had to suffer through and the things that we're still experiencing can be impactful as well. Doug, I've always appreciated when you've responded to the stories, and you and I have usually squeezed the ball or talked about how some of these things are still happening. Doug?
And not to cut in on your time, Doc, but audience, I 10, 15, 20 years ago would be, oh, I'm not going to go see no quack. Let me tell you something. Quacks are my best friend. Call me a quacker lover. So it can give you the mental fortitude, not only to have a successful life, but a healthy life. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, Dr.
No problem, Doug. That's an important point. And so vicarious, sometimes we don't know when we've been traumatized. I know growing up in Oakland, one of the issues of the Oakland Tribune at the end of the year would publish the faces of all the people that had been killed. And while that was in one ways acknowledging the legacies of the people we lost, As the homicide rate increased in Oakland, it was also, I imagine, the families in some ways may have had mixed feelings of this idea of being reminded of trauma. So we have community trauma, sometimes we have personal trauma. So what does this mean? If, for instance, taking a break. So after Monday Night Football, I had a very hard time sleeping. I, of course, was very concerned about Mr. Hamilin. And so I took a break, had to do some meditation, some soothing music. For me, it's Anita Baker, and just kind of de-stress. Sometimes it's also taking a break from, I didn't really want to talk to anyone. I needed to kind of recenter myself, listen to some things that are motivational, inspiring, exercising, journaling. So having an outlet. When our cup is empty, we can't show up for our friends, our family, or our work. So just kind of want to invite everyone to take temperature of themselves. How full is your cup? Have you been traumatized by different stories? Taking a break from the news, kind of connecting with people that, again, asking also when you talk to someone on the phone, let me add this. It's fine to want support from someone, but checking in with your loved ones about whether or not they can handle something else, hearing something else. So checking in with someone, I really want to share with you something that happened to me that's upsetting. Is now a good time? Do you have space to listen? Would this overwhelm you? Because sometimes we can dump on people, unintentionally. We don't even know that they're past their limit. So checking in. And then also, just to end this, as always, therapyforblackgirls.com, therapyforblackmen.org. Again, calling the hotline or going to the local ER or hospital if you're having thoughts or if someone you know is having thoughts of wanting to harm or kill themselves. But also, I want to share this. I have heard a number of stories recently about people suddenly going into cardiac arrest. And I think the same way it's important to know CPR, I want to encourage our listeners to also research signs of someone being in cardiac arrest and distress. Because of the stories I've had to hear, immediate response and being able to recognize those signs and get people help can actually save lives. Doug?
Dr. Ashley, thank you for taking the time out each week to educate our audience on how important it is to get that mental health that's needed to make you more successful in your life, successful in your community, and most importantly, successful in your family. I recently got a new pair of glasses.
Yeah, I like it. I like
Oh,
them.
wait a
Yeah.
minute. Hold on.
Uh-oh. Styling and profiling.
Well, I was wearing the CVS Rite Aid, and I'm not trying to get in their props, but I noticed I'm still adjusting to wearing glasses now, but being able to see is so important. And it's just as important to be able to mentally handle the daily stresses that causes anxiety, depression, suicide, family divorces, violence, etc., etc., etc. So just like you would go see an optometrist so you can see better, or a dentist so you can look better, or a doctor so you can physically feel better, go see a doctor of psychology. Dr. Ashley, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank
And
you,
I'm
Doug.
going to check and see if we have Allyssa Victory backstage, because our outstanding producer, Ms. X, she's out in Contra Costa County, and she just informed me that there is hurricane-like weather out there, thunder, lightning, etc. But to that end, we are going to immediately, and you know what? I'm going to love advertising this. We got a victory corner. We got a victory corner. And speaking of victory corner, audience, let's welcome back friend of the show, rising star
Mhm.
in politics in the city of Oakland, Alameda County, and the state of California. Let's welcome back Allyssa Victory Esquire, one of our favorite social justice leaders. And considering we were having this ranked choice voting debacle here in Oakland, and audience, if you recall, several shows ago, Allyssa Victory came on our show and outlined to the T how the ranked choice voting goes. So many people who say they didn't understand it, that's because you didn't watch the Black Business Roundtable. Dr.
That's
Ashley,
right. Happy New Year.
you love how
New Year.
they had watched the show. They would already know, but we're gonna pick up some audience this year based on that. Dr. Ashley, please read this wonderful, intelligent, articulate person bio. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Miss Allyssa Victory is a civil rights leader, educator, and licensed attorney serving across the Bay Area and the state of California. She holds a Bachelor of Arts with honors in ethnic studies and a minor in Black studies, as well as a Juris Doctorate concentrated in government law. Allyssa currently practices in policing and labor law and is an elected ADEM delegate to the California Democratic Party for Assembly District 18. Allyssa currently is running for another term of ADEM 18 as candidate number 12. As Doug mentioned, and I just want to echo, Happy New Year, Allyssa. So great to have you and very excited to hear about your Victory Corner. So welcome back.
Thank you. Happy New Year again. I'm very excited to be back and to see another strong year starting off for the Black Business Roundtable.
Thank
I'm
you.
just honored to have a small segment now where I'll be joining regularly to share reflections, what's going on in Oakland, what's going on in politics, and what's going on with Victory for Oakland platform. But very happy to see you both. Happy to see your new glasses. I have this is for my computer that just help with looking at screens all day. Sorry about the glare. I'm trying to get a different angle on it. But yeah, Victory Corner. I mean, it's only 5 days into the new year. We're coming up on January 6th, which now has a very powerful meaning for our country as the anniversary of the terrorist attack on our capital. And it coincides perfectly with these ADEM elections that you mentioned that are happening very quickly. If you sleep on it, it's going to be gone. The election for this assembly district is going to host in-person voting this Saturday, January 7th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 1831 Park Boulevard in Oakland. It's near Lake Merritt. You have to have registered at ademelections.com to have your voter pin. You can vote for up to 14 candidates. I'm running. I'm number 12 on your ballot. And I'm also running with a people-powered slate of the people's candidates. We're holding a meet and greet tomorrow at Somar Bar from 5:30 to 9. If you need help registering, if you want to meet us, if y'all have questions. But our democracy is in crisis. You mentioned the ranked choice voting issues. All of these are coming up again around that January 6th anniversary, reminding us that we still have a lot of work to do to make sure our democracy reflects us all, that it's working for us all, that we're holding our electeds accountable, and that we are combating terrorism, voter suppression, white supremacy across our city, our county, and our country.
Before I turn this over to Allyssa, let me just say this to our audience. Many people in America, specifically African Americans, are unintelligent in regards to the political process, how each and every vote makes a difference. And as we move forward with Allyssa Victory's Corner, we hope that you encourage others to tune in to the Black Business Roundtable to understand from a legal beagle, Allyssa Victory Esquire, our eagle of legality in the Oakland, Alameda, and state of California as she gets reelected to her ADEMS, and ADEMS means Alameda Democratic Elected. Am I correct? Uh-oh. You know I did that on purpose. Tell them what ADEMS mean.
ADEM stands for Assembly District Election Meeting. So we're having the election meeting for our whole assembly district this Saturday for you to vote in person. Some people already registered to vote by mail. That option has closed, but you still got to make sure you get that ballot in the mail and return it to the Democratic Party before the 31st of this month. And that election, again, is critical because a lot of voters are Democrat, especially in Oakland, especially in Alameda County. And so that party is supposed to represent a majority of our voters. We have a right to have a voice in this particular election. These delegates are 1/3 of the whole delegates to the party. Others are elected on a different ballot. Others are appointed. Others are elected officials who hold seats already. And so these seats are supposed to be independently elected by the people to represent the people. And that's why I'm on the People Slate. 8018forthepeople.com is our full slate website with more information about each of us as candidates who are everyday workers, artists, people who were just elected, people who ran for office like me who weren't, but who are committed to expanding our democracy for everybody.
Allyssa Victory, you have the floor for your first segment, Victory's Corner. Woohoo!
Victory's Corner. I mean, some of them will be topics. I'd love if people have questions to throw them my way, but I do want to reflect on some of the things I talked about in my opening of, the January 6th anniversary coming up and kind of reflections on what's going on with our democracy here. Just this morning, our Board of Supervisors had a meeting where one of the agenda items was ranked choice voting, was issues of the registrar's office. One of the most glaring was the office admitting that they made errors in how they ran the formula for ranked choice voting, and it made a difference in the outcome in the District 4 school board for Oakland. And that someone who had placed third is now the winner. And they have to go through specific legal process to overturn certification of the wrong winner. And so that's really serious, but the county has caught it, has admitted it. We're having, at least ability for the public to comment and give input on how we can make this not happen again, how we can restore some faith in the integrity of our elections. I think there's a lot of good ideas and that we need a lot of change and a lot of reform. I wrote about this recently with the SF Bayview News, which is a Black publication here, and just talked about ranked choice voting having been around for over a decade in the city, that it was actually championed by a lot of our Black civic orgs like NAACP, the Labor Council, the Alameda Democratic Party, when it was first proposed on the ballot. And around 70% of our city's voters at the time passed it, voted yes, that they wanted our system to change to that. And I think still with any change, you have to do a lot of civic education. Ranked choice voting is supposed to save us money because usually there's the primary that happens in June for us, and then there's the runoff of the top two candidates if nobody gets the 50% plus one vote. And ranked choice voting consolidates those and is an instant runoff. And so having one election to administer is supposed to be cheaper. One ballot guide, one time to vote, one time to host election polling places and to get out the vote, one date to message for us candidates who are running. But that money needs to be spent back into voters, back into enfranchising people, back into educating and also expanding the right to vote. I see Doug has a question, a comment.
I have to say this because our audience is not just here in Oakland and in the county and in the state, but it's all across the nation. This information that you are feeding today and twice a month moving forward, it will hopefully get more people involved in the political process. Because I'll wrap up by saying this. I've talked to many young African-American kids, youth, teenagers, twins. And you know what they say? They don't believe in the process. They don't understand the process. Moving forward, audience, please encourage your friends, family, community, neighbors to watch us every other Thursday, especially for Victory's Corner, and become informed on how to wade through this political process that seems to sometimes confuse people. Because I was on that same meeting this morning, and let me tell you something. If it had not been for you articulating about a month ago the ranked choice voting, I would still be in a fog. So on that note, I'm going to chime out and let us have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Being political education is necessary year-round. Our government system, changes, it morphs. Even people who get elected have to learn what their jobs are, what their specific powers are under whatever laws of the government they're in. It's the same with the people who are subject to that. So even if folks don't believe in or want to exercise their right to vote, they should still know what that right is. They should still know how to, if they ever choose to. You don't always have to vote for everything that's on the ballot. You don't have to vote in every single election. You should vote for things that are important to you and that you are researched and versed in. But those things are still going to be happening, even if you don't participate, right? There are really low turnout elections that can maybe be decided by a few hundred folks, like these ADEM elections. A few hundred votes can decide the people that represent our entire assembly district. That's 3 cities for us here in 8018, Oakland, Alameda, and Emeryville. Some assembly districts are even larger, right? And so when people don't know, part of that is intentional, that we're too busy, that we're too poor, that we're too sick to be focused on politics and understand that they'll make voting harder, right? There's voter suppression happening across our country, that there's not mail ballots in every state like we have in California. California restored the right of ex-felons and ex-convicts to vote, and that is not true for many other states. And so when people come here, they still need to be educated all the time on what their rights are, how they may differ from other places in our own country, how different counties, right, different cities have different laws. Not every place has Oakland Youth Vote. Has youth vote. Oakland was the first city to do that. We were the first to adopt that. There was a state measure that failed the same year. So we could have had it statewide, but Oakland was the first to pass it. We have to make sure those rights are real and that people know about it, right? Just passing a law is not enough. I tell people all the time as a lawyer, it's great on paper, it's great in policy, but it's even better in practice. Right? People have to know what an exercise of their rights looks like, what it means, and if they want to use it, to be fully informed on how to. I see you got some more questions, comments, Doug.
I got a very important question that I gathered from the meeting with the Alameda County Board of Supervisors. I heard a gentleman state that this ranked choice voting makes it more inclusive for people who do not have the resources to be a Republican or Democrat. It gives them a new time, a newcomer into the process, an opportunity not only to run, but to win. Can you explain and articulate to our audience how important it is? Because I say this all the time. We have a bunch of old guys and old gals out there who are holding on to that power at the ages of 70, 80, and might even be 90 years old. How this ranked choice voting process gives those grassroots campaign an opportunity not only to run, but to win. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I am the grassroots mayor candidate, so I'm the best positioned to explain that. My campaign raised less than $30,000 over the year plus that we campaigned. We still reached all 7 districts of the city. The city has over 100,000 voters. We contacted people every day. We registered people to vote every day. And we got very competitive endorsements along with folks that out fundraised us 10 to 1, 20 to 1. There's also people who had what's called independent expenditures, which are independent monies that don't have the same limits as our regular campaign fundraising. And they all were able to get more votes than me, but those were the only folks who had more money. And so having ranked choice voting allowed me to message not against any of the other candidates, but with them. to say that's fine if you already have a number one. Can you vote for me in your top three? That's fine if you have a top three. Can you vote me in your top five, since we have 5 votes this election cycle? It allowed me to not have to really be ever against anyone else's platform or any other candidate, but to say if there's similarities, then you can still rank me. And for voters to not have that direct split between anyone, but to be able to choose multiple candidates that they supported, that they resonated with. And I think in any election, you're never going to find a candidate that you 100% agree with. And so it gives more freedom for voters, and it allows a lot more leeway in how I campaign message wise, but definitely money. And the cost of elections is really high. We passed public financing that goes into effect in 2 years in Oakland, which can change the game even more. But right now, if there's just one candidate against each other and you can only vote for one person on the ballot, the person who's raising the most money can set the bar. If ranked choice and you can vote for 3 or 5 candidates, then you can have alliances, you can have coalitions, and you can have candidates pool their money. You can have candidates pay for flyers together. You can have candidates do events together. We can have us put our volunteers and our people power together instead of just one campaign on its own. I did that with a few candidates, but especially across the city elections with council, school board, and our new DA, Pamela Price, to combine our people power and our grassroots campaigns, knowing that we didn't have a lot of money, knowing that we had to make up for not having ads and not having a lot of money to spend on other things, with just the power of our voice, the power of our story, and the platforms that we were running on. So ranked choice voting allowed us to build those coalitions, to organize throughout this campaign, and to partner and not just focus on ourselves, but be able to message across other campaigns and platforms.
Dr. Ashley, I know I'm
kind of go ahead. No, go ahead.
After listening to a 4.5-hour Alameda County Democratic, and it went longer than that. I just had to start preparing for the show. I want to ask you this, since you are our guru of ranked choice voting, can you tell our audience locally here how? And I talked to Mike Hutchinson. He will, and audience, this is for a future show. I talked to Mike Hutchinson, and he has agreed to come on to the show. He was a person who was cheated out of his initial win, but when they retabulated the votes, he won. He came in third, and then he went from third to first. So, second part of that question is, the Alameda County voter register of voters said that was the only mistake that was made, because they didn't hit a button that tabulated his votes to calculate to where he won. And he said that was the only race that had been altered. Can you tell our audience, through your understanding, how the other races will not be affected if there is a recount, because there was a tabulation configuration that wasn't done? Can you explain to our audience that? Because I understand now, because I sat there for 4.5 hours and listened. But can you, being our guru, explain to our audience that concept? Thank you.
I wish I had my demonstratives to help explain with, the actual numbers and breakdown. But hopefully I will follow that. Again, ranked choice, it cuts the lowest performing candidate and redistributes votes to second place and so forth until one candidate has over 50% plus one of the vote. Even if you win by one vote, you're the winner. But sometimes if there's any of those errors, that one vote, right, if it's moved to the wrong side, can be critical in changing the overall outcome. The amount of ranks in the cuts depends on how many candidates. So some races had 3 candidates, some races had 2 candidates, some races like mine had 10 candidates. I had to go through a lot more rankings and a lot more possible combinations from voters than others. The school board race that was overturned recently with the retabulation was 3 candidates in that race, right? And there was 5 available ranks. So there was less candidates than there were rankings. And there were a lot of ballots that were thrown out by having started their voting at the second place and having all of them discounted, which was an error. For other races, they were all retabulated, but the errors were so small that they did not change the ultimate outcome. They affected first round rankings. And in the case of this District 4 school board, the first round ranking, again, the person who actually won was cut in that first round. So the mistake made in the first round was consequential to the ultimate outcome. But in the other races, even if there was the adjustment of, 3, 5, 10 votes, it still did not change what then happened in the second, third, fourth, fifth ranks to make the ultimate winner, the 50% plus one. And so I hope that helps. The tabulations are again available on the county's registrar's website of what happened in each rank. The first ranks were slightly readjusted after the formula was applied correctly, and it ultimately affected the final outcome for only one race. I do support an overall audit of the registrar's work this year of all elections that were administered by their office, because there was just so lack of transparency. There was so much confusion. There was a lack of communication, it seems, between elections offices, between candidates, and we have to still restore integrity to the results. And I think an overall audit and review is something that I definitely support, not targeting any specific race. And we've seen the registrar themselves identify and admit error in only one race. But I think there's, again, other things around education, communication that also need to be audited.
I just want to jump into and just ask a question, Allyssa. So in addition to auditing and just more transparency with the process, can you share a little bit more about some of the brainstormed ideas of how to improve this process going forward?
Yes. Well, improved communication. Like me as a candidate, we were expecting 3 ranked choice spots because that's what the county had done since we've implemented ranked choice voting.
Okay.
The county, could have done a better job of letting the elections offices, letting voters, letting candidates know earlier that they would have 5 options instead of 3. Again, the law allows for them to have as many options as our candidates, so it could have been even more, but still letting us know what number to message, what to expect the ballots to look like. And again, that could have changed some rank options. If I was ranking with 3 people and no, I could have ranked with 5. So it changes things, and having that knowledge up front and as soon as possible would be really helpful. There's also timing issues of I got my ballot guide after I got my ballot. Right, so making sure people have their guide early enough to really review, to read how ranked choice voting works, to look at the candidate statements. Right, a lot of people like to fill out that booklet beforehand so that they feel really prepared once they get that ballot. And so timing issues, again, there's still new voters who've never done mail voting, who've never done ranked choice voting. And there's a lot of people who, this was open elections for so many seats. So all the names were brand new, and people had to go back to, you can vote for a DA, you can vote for sheriff in these positions. We have to still do more year-round voter education, civic engagement. But RCV, I think, can be messaged. There was great graphics that I saw organizations make at some of our candidate forums. They literally gave people, like 5 pieces of paper to hold up whenever they wanted to show who their top 5 were, and to keep messaging to the audience, you're going to have 5 votes and let's practice that right now. So there were some organizations that I saw really committed to including that messaging in their candidate forums, in their voter outreach, and in their messaging flyers that they were printing and distributing around the community. I think the county, right, our government offices can do more of that themselves, even year round, right, before election season of, hey, reminder, get registered to vote before elections come up. Here's who can vote. Here's how our elections are run with ranked choice voting if you're in these specific cities. And I think it takes a lot more coordination with our city offices, with our city governments, and the county registrar. They hold so much power. They are running all the elections in the county, and they need to have real accountability around making sure they're run fairly, that they're run consistent, and that they're run with integrity.
Well, Dr. Ashley, you mind if
No,
I ask?
no, not at all.
And this goes directly to my next question to you, Victory's Corner. You were cheated initially out of the opportunity to run based on a debacle, a fiasco that the city of Oakland made. Can you briefly tell our audience or remind our audience about that? And everyone isn't an accomplished, intelligent, articulate, smart, tenacious, a go-getter like you. So many people would have given up. Remind our audience what happened to you when they tried to legally remove you from the ballots. Thank you.
There was, again, so many issues with not just the county registrar, but also with our city elections office. I was a candidate when I filed in August, along with the other candidates for mayor. We were all given the wrong deadline. Half of us were given appointments to file our paperwork after the actual deadline when it was reinterpreted by the clerk. We were given less than 24 hours to comply with the updated deadline. I was called in the middle of my workday to rush to City Hall to file all my paperwork. I still made it through all of that drama and chaos and panic, really, and filed my paperwork, paid my fees, took my picture in front of City Hall, and was, excited about being a candidate and having made it through that huge milestone after campaigning for over 8 months. And then I was told after the weekend that my filing didn't qualify, that there was problems with 2 of my signatures, and that there was no chance to fix it or dispute it because the deadline had passed. I tried all I could to reason with people, to use logic, to use my knowledge of the law as a civil rights attorney, and our elections office really refused to use their power to control our elections and to administer a fair election. Decided to deny me on the spot, and so I went to our city attorney. Our city attorney decided that they wanted to deny me, to refuse to respond for 2 weeks. I went to our state elections office, our Secretary of State, and had to speak with their attorneys who reviewed the documents, the paperwork, the signatures, and our city laws around those specific signatures. And they agreed with my analysis that what I submitted was sufficient. There was no problem with my paperwork at all. It qualified despite the deadline issue and having to rush. Everything I turned in did qualify under our laws, and that it was the city who had to fix it because it's a city election that they're in charge of. Our city finally called me at the last hour after 2 weeks and said, we agree. We're going to issue a response. And they had to do a new ballot draw because they had already chosen the order of candidates to appear on the ballot without me. And so we had to rush to make sure that I was included on this ballot. The 3 other folks were kicked off during that whole fiasco, and it would have been 13 candidates had that not happened. And so there was, again, a lot of unfairness. I was able to fight my way back because everything I submitted was correct, and I did not go quietly. I got a community to rally behind me to push the city attorney, who is our attorney, who is supposed to be advising these offices on what is legal, what is right. I was also challenged in using my name, Allyssa Victory, on the ballot. And they agreed 100% that I'm allowed to use my chosen name, the name I've gone by for the last 6+ years, Allyssa Victory, on the ballot. And so that was a small victory for me, just to get through that hurdle, just to be able to be a choice for people to vote for. There is the option to do write-in, but it's very hard to do a write-in campaign, and you still have to go through filing and paperwork. And I wanted the city to respect my rights and that I actually complied with everything I had to, even despite the circumstances of them making it really difficult with the timeline and the deadlines.
Let me ask you, and this only requires a yes or no answer. What nonprofit organizations ran to defend you through, and you are an African-American woman, right?
Yes.
What nonprofit organizations ran to help you through this debacle? And if you want an attorney, you would have had to walk quietly into the dark. Did any?
Not that I know of, mostly C4s.
Tell us about your campaign for ADEM delegate for Oakland, Alameda, and Emeryville. Oakland, Alameda, and Emeryville, AD18, and you're endorsed by Oakland's newly elected Mayor Shang Tao. Thank you.
Thank you. So ADEM elections happen every 2 years, and they happen across the entire state of California for the Democratic Party. Any Democratic voter can participate, but you have to request and register for a ballot internally with the Democratic Party. So this is not county elections like we've been talking about. This is not the city elections office. This is just the political party itself who administers the elections, controls the candidates, the ballots, all of that. And each assembly district, there are 80 in California, each district will elect 14 delegates to represent them to the state party. All of those delegates elected across the district are the ADEM delegates, and we're 1/3 of all the delegates to the party. So there's a lot, right? Thousands across the state that decide the party's platform, that elect the party's officers, that also decide who gets the Democratic Party's endorsement. That endorsement is huge. We have a supermajority in our legislature. So when people run for legislative seats, we have a powerful voice. Many of our cities and counties, including Oakland, are majority Democratic voters, with people being connected to this party, even if it's just through registration. But everyone has the right to vote in this election, and this is the seat for the people. So delegates help determine the future of the party, who's supported by the party. We want to hold the party itself accountable to its own promises to reject contributions from the fossil fuel industry, from law enforcement, and to center things like racial justice, expanding our democracy, and including more folks in their own leadership. 2 years ago was the first cycle that I ran. I was elected as number 4 out of the 7 women candidates that are chosen for each district. And I really ran because I wanted to understand more of our political process. I wanted to get more involved in our Democratic Party because we have a large Democratic population here in my city. I also wanted to make sure that those resources and that knowledge of the political process are getting back into the community that needs it the most, that are marginalized, that are disenfranchised, or that are excluded wholly from voting. Those folks still need to understand who their representatives are, what they're doing, and what they should be doing for them, right, as folks that are marginalized in this process. I also helped to found the Elect Black ADEMS campaign 2 years ago, because Black people are less than 1% of these thousands of delegates to the Democratic Party. So even though we're in California and we're Democratic, we still have work to do in terms of racial justice, economic justice, immigrant justice, all of those areas that still we see people disenfranchised and marginalized from power, even internally. So I'm committed to running with everyday people, running with people of color, running with more women, with more immigrants, with people who have a different story that can contribute a different perspective to this statewide organization with a lot of political power, a lot of political connections. A lot of folks that have the right to vote that still don't know how, that don't know what their electeds are doing, that couldn't tell me who their representatives are right now. But those people are making decisions that are going to affect you or already have. Those people have power to make more decisions that can help you or that could hurt you. And it's important to be at the table, to understand what's coming, to understand what they're working towards, and to also shift them to move to alignment, again, with people that are still outside of those systems of power. Those are the reasons why I ran 2 years ago, the reasons why I've been working for the last 2 years, along with our Democratic Party for Alameda County as an associate member, as a member of many of our local Democratic clubs, to get out the vote. Right, I sponsored Oakland Youth Vote. I want to ensure that we are enfranchising young people to vote, that we're enfranchising formerly incarcerated people to vote. Those people can change the people that we elect ultimately. If they have to speak to students in their classrooms, right, they might get a different type of school board director. If you have to have someone that does that for a whole year of campaigning instead of just talk to us or donors. right? If you have formerly incarcerated folks that a DA has to speak to, right? Someone who's prosecuted these folks and may be responsible for their incarceration. There's different engagement, there's different questions, there's different answers that you get from having those type of folks able to vote and participate in our political process. Those things have passed and we have to make them real. So I'm running because we still have work to do. Our democracy is still in crisis. I was kicked off the ballot even as a champion of our civil rights and our democracy. And so it doesn't matter, even if you know your rights, we still have to keep fighting. We still have to keep working, and we need more people to join us to make sure that we keep a stronghold once we're making progress, that we're not being pushed back, because there will always be people pushing back on what we're doing.
And folks, audience, you heard it here on the Black Business Roundtable. As we wrap this up, we have Mr. Harris in the backstage.
Yes,
Victory,
legend.
I look forward in being educated every 2 weeks with your wealth of political power and powerful information. And I appreciate you agreeing to come on every 2 weeks for Victory Corner.
Thank you both so much. Again, for people who are voting anywhere in California, make sure you go to ademelections.com to register. Find your district. If you're in Assembly District 18, Oakland, Alameda, Emeryville, our in-person is this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 1831 Park Boulevard. Vote for me and the People's Slate, 8018forthepeople.com. I am number 12 on the ballot for our district. Please vote. Bring somebody with you. If you're vote by mail, look out for your ballot in the mail starting next week, and make sure you return it immediately. I can be followed at Victory for Oakland on all social media, victoryforoakland.com. You can sign up for my mailing list. And I, again, look forward to coming back, sharing more Victory's Corner with you all, and looking forward to a great 2023.
Wonderful. Allyssa, thank you so much. And I just want to also acknowledge how you had to advocate and fight to remain on the ballot, the confidence, the persistence, again, and keeping your eye on the prize of the mission. And so we know that often it takes the mental fortitude to fight for your just due. So again, not surprised you're continuing to make waves and make change. But thank you for sharing that, because I think our audience needs to remember that even when we have freedoms, we still often have to fight for what we deserve.
Absolutely. And so even if you don't vote for yourself, consider voting for someone who doesn't have the right to vote.
We'll see you in 2 weeks for Victory Corner. Thank you, Allyssa.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Next
night.
time. Dr. Ashley, can you take us away for a break?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover of blackusa.news. Audience, we have a wonderful platform with sister shows that also bring the information and laughs to you. Chap and Friends on Mondays, Party Marty Let's Talk on Tuesdays. There's Black USA Crypto News with Kamal Hubbard on Fridays. On Saturdays, there's the Blackout Live from New York with Tashmir. And on Sundays, there's 60 Minutes in Black USA with Michael Haney. To join our BBRT advertising family or to be a possible guest on the show, you can reach us via email, bbrt2021@hotmail.com. In the email, please include your company name, its website, as well as contact information for vetting consideration. Doug?
On that note, we're running a few minutes behind, but we want to immediately get Mr. Robert L. Harris out here on the stage. Dr. Ashley, please read his bio.
And it will be my pleasure to do so. Mr. Robert Harris Esquire in 1998 was elected Vice President of Environmental Affairs, the first ever environmental officer for PG&E, and he retired on January 1st, 2007 as Vice President of Environmental, Health, Safety, Technical, and Land Services after 34 years of service with the company. He is the recipient of a number of prestigious awards and long active in Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. Happy Founders Day, by the way, Mr. Harris. And as well served as the fraternity's 27th Hallmark National President from 1991 to 1995. Welcome back, Mr. Harris. We're so fortunate to have you join us.
Delighted to be here on the anniversary of Kappa Alpha Psi, founded in 1911, Indiana University.
Mr. Harris, thank you for joining us today. We are going to jump right into it. The community coming together after an election, winners and losers, and where we go from here, especially the elections recently had here in Alameda County. We have a new sheriff who is a Hispanic woman. We have a mayor who is among descendant, and that is AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander. We have an African American Black woman for the first time in history to be the Alameda County District Attorney, council members, etc. Tell us your thoughts on that, sir. Thank you.
Well, I've known Pamela Price, for example, for almost all of her legal career. She was, as you know, elected this first Black person to be elected District Attorney of Alameda County, having run for that position previously and made a spectacular showing against the then District Attorney Nancy O'Malley. My belief is that Pamela will do an outstanding job as the Alameda County District Attorney. The election in Oakland somewhat has evolved into some controversy, of course. And you heard Allyssa Victory explain the ranked choice voting, which to some extent caused some of the problems because people really didn't understand how ranked choice voting works. And if you don't understand how a process works, then you cannot vote intelligently. So that, again, that ended up today in the Board of Supervisors, which I listened to and had to get off in order to get on to this program because it was still going. There is still a lot of confusion even among the members of the Board of Supervisors. So you have to understand that, viewers have to understand that ranked choice voting is not as simple as it appears to be, although it is a form of voting, and some jurisdictions have accepted that as a voting mechanism, and I can respect that. But it is confusing at times, no question about that, especially if people have not been educated on how it works.
Dr. Ashley, please.
Yeah, I'm going to switch the order of my questions, Mr. Harris, since you're on the topic of ranked choice voting and you're mentioning, it sounds like one con of that, of the confusion. From your perspective, can you share a little bit more about the pros and cons of ranked choice voting?
Well, the traditional rationale for ranked choice voting is that it saves money. And that's how it was promoted in the city of Oakland when it was on the ballot back in, I believe it was in 2008, and then went into effect 2 years later, 2010. A lot of people, unfortunately, did not understand what they were voting for. And that, I think, has been a big problem for some of the people. And now it's at a point where some people want to reconsider the issue, that is, put it back on the ballot and with full knowledge of how it works, and give the voters an opportunity to vote on it again as to whether or not they prefer ranked choice versus regular ballot. For example, Alameda County has regular voting. It does not have ranked choice. The city of Oakland, city of San Leandro, and the city of Berkeley, for example, do have ranked choice voting. The county of San Francisco has ranked choice voting, but the county of Alameda does not. So it's a preference that some people prefer and other people do not prefer. Most jurisdictions in the United States, matter of fact, do not have ranked choice voting. It's a very few jurisdictions with ranked choice voting, and statewide, it's, I believe, only Alaska and Maine have ranked choice voting. But again, it's a choice that people can make.
Mr. Harris, I'd like to ask you, and this was one of the questions I asked, started off with. You've been around for several decades with the many different
plus decades.
I'm
8 years old.
Well, you look good, OG.
And I'm one of those OGs you've been talking about.
Well, let me say this, Mr. Harris. The community coming together after an election, winners and losers, and where we go from here. Can you help our audience, not just here in Oakland and in Alameda County and in the state of California, but all across the United States, understand when the election is over, the Democratic Party, winners and losers, either you have to lick your wounds and say, hey, let's get back in, do better next time, but let's work as a unit for the common good of our community, of our neighborhoods, of our, just as a group of Black people. What type of information, what type of piecemeal lingo can you give our audience across this city, across this county, across this state, and across this nation and globally? What kind of information, how can you inform us and help us come together? And you might even need to solicit some of Dr. Ashley's mind going, because some of us take this personal and we become vindictive and vicious against the winner who we are all a party of. Whether you win, lose, or draw, at the end of the day, we become one unit to fight for one common cause, because Republicans have demonstrated time and time again that a divided house will fall. Thank you, sir.
Well, all you need to do in terms of understanding the difficulty of some people to accept the results of election is think about your boy Trump. He's an election denier. He still won't admit that he lost the presidential election in 2020. He lost, period. And he needs to get over it. Voting is so fundamental to the rights of Black people. It was the 15th Amendment passed in 1870 that gave Black folks the right to vote. And immediately thereafter, white folks, unfortunately, conjured up every method they could think of to prevent the right of Black people to vote. And you ask yourself, why? Because voting is power. Power. And people don't want Blacks to vote because they exhibit that power. And unfortunately, many Black folks succumb to the desires of others to keep them out of the polls. And that's something that we should not do. But once we go to the polls and we make a decision, it is critical that at the end of the day, when the election is over and when all of the legal remedies are exhausted, then you move forward. The only way you can move forward is to bind together with, even if your candidate did not win, you ought to find some way to work with who the winner was so that you can make your community better. Because that's what it's all about, making our lives better, making the communities in which we live better. And we can only do that if we work together and not using an election as an opportunity to create chaos. We should use the results of an election to look to combine the efforts of all of us to move the community forward so that each of us individually and collectively will be better off. And that's what we should all be doing at the end of the day when the election is over.
Dr. Ashley, please.
Yeah, I just first wanted to just respond to that, Mr. Harris, because I hear you saying there's this process of acceptance, which also involves just acknowledgement of the loss and then a recommitment to the purpose. And so what's implied there and what you're saying, and Doug, you've been speaking very passionately about this before the new year, is it sounds like people are stuck in their desire to win and what that looks like and kind of digging their heels in. And so acceptance can be a process, but I hear you saying it's critical for that process to be completed as soon as possible so that there can be harmony and just collaboration going forward.
That is correct, Dr. Ashley. And you got to remember, for every winner, there's a loser. Somebody is going to lose the election. And you got to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. So I've run in a number of elections. When I ran for president of the National Bar Association back in 1978, I had a strategy. If I lost, I lost. But and I see this today. I see people who are running for office and have no strategy as to what they're going to do if they lose. Because somebody is going to lose. And mentally, as you know, you got to be prepared for that. Otherwise, you just freak out. And there's no reason to freak out, because part of the process of running for office is understanding that what happens if I lose? You don't plan to lose, but what happens if I lose? That's why you find good candidates for office will have a prepared speech, one if they win and one if they lose. But you notice Trump didn't have that, did he? And he's still 2 years later, he's crazy because he cannot understand the process of losing. And he's a loser, and he just doesn't want to admit it. Right. And that's how he projects himself. But he's a loser.
And it's so interesting you say that, Mr. Harris. Before I ask the next question, often when we lose or we fail, we can come back again with experience and be victorious, like our current sitting president, Biden, where third time was the charm for him. And so, yes, losing can be informative and just what we need to go forth and be victorious in the future. Doug?
Dr. Ashley, can you share with our audience some mind-strengthening ideas of how to adjust to, and we know how a winner's going to act, but how to adjust to a loss mentally, because I've had an opportunity to talk to quite a few people who lost, and it's almost like talking to a baby and want to give them a pacifier because they don't know how to handle a loss. I've lost several things in my life, whether it be business, jobs, but that strengthens me to come back and really put them dukes up and say, okay, now I need to change the game. Or so what can you share before we ask Mr. Harris the next question? What can you share with our audience on how not to be a sore loser? Thank you.
Well, you know what's so interesting is I think it's first separating a loss from branding yourself as a loser. And I think, as Mr. Harris says, some people aren't even humble enough to even sit with the idea that they can lose. And so they're not prepared with any coping strategies in order to sit with that. It's a grieving process. And then it involves really what it can be some transparent self-reflection. What strategies worked? What strategies didn't? What could I have done better? Is there an advisor who has some wisdom that I can seek out? How can I fortify my skills? But that involves reflection and an honesty and a humility of saying, I can get better at this. So it reminds me of, I'm going to just, two quotes. Nelson Mandela, and this helped me during my dissertation process. It always seems impossible until it's done. That was one quote. And then to summarize Michael Jordan, I fail when I don't try. So in order to even seize a comeback season, right, you first have to be able to grieve that it hurts, acknowledge it, and get up. But a lot of people, when they lose, they believe they're losers and they lose the courage to try again.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I've often said, and it was a quote from somebody else, a setback is nothing more than a setup for a comeback. And I remember when I argued a case for PG&E in the United States Supreme Court. Now, it was a case that most people, all law professors just about, and all law firms said I could not win. So I was already positioned from the beginning that I was going to lose. So when I won, it was like, hey, heaven has opened up. But had I lost, I would not have been depressed. I would have just said, hey, I chalked this up for a new day, a new opportunity. And another example was I've lost one election as I run for various positions in the Boule, the fraternity, or National Bar Association. Was in 1974, I ran in Kappa Alpha Psi for the senior province vice hallmark. And guess what? I lost. I mean, I never dreamed I was going to lose, but I lost. And rather than getting bitter about it, I found out why I lost. And the reason I lost is that I forgot to count my votes. And not just assume that people were going to vote for me because of all these great things that I allegedly had done, certainly in my own mind. But from that day forward, in Kappa Alpha Psi, I never lost another election because I was not only prepared, but I was prepared to count the votes in advance to know where I was going to be positioned. So win or lose, it was no surprise because I had counted the votes.
Mr. Harris, can I ask you a follow-up question before we go back to getting your opinion on elections? If you can go back to when you were arguing the case in the Supreme Court, and everyone, it sounds like colleagues were predicting that you were going to lose because that was just the status quo. what strategies did you use to focus, kind of tune out the naysayers? Young people, we like to say they, the anonymous, they said I'm going to lose, they said. And so what did you do in order to really focus in on yeah, if you can share that.
Almost every day, I quoted to myself, Marcus Garvey, if you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have begun. I use that as the mechanism for giving me the strength to listen to those naysayers. And I found that it even worked when I was studying for the bar exam. People saying that you're not going to pass, you're not going to pass. What that does, it destroys your confidence in self. And once you lose confidence in yourself, you're dead. I mean, somebody can come up to you and just swing that thing and you fall over. You ever Sonny Liston?
Yeah.
And Muhammad Ali?
Yeah, the boxers.
Sonny Liston, heavyweight champion of the world, was psyched out by Muhammad Ali, who by the time he got into the ring with Sonny Liston was so defeated because at that time his name was Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay had psychologically whipped him. And when you psychologically whip somebody, it's even better than physically whipping them because now you have destroyed their minds, not their bodies.
Dr. Ashley, on that note, once again, Mr. Harris has gave a terrific overview of how to strengthen the mind. What can you expand on that? Because a lot of our young Black men and women in this country feel that they're left out of the political process, can't get those good jobs, don't have a chance of changing their communities, don't have a chance of running and winning an election, and so on and so forth. What can you share with our audience, some mind strengthening things to take that splinter out of their minds for failure and turn it into success? Because as Mr. Harris knows, I've been drop kicked quite a few times, but somehow I roll over and come back harder. So go ahead, Dr. Ashley, share a few things with our audience.
I think it first starts in family. I've been fortunate to have great-grandparents and grandparents and parents who not only taught me the importance of African-American history, but also our family history. And we're transparent about overcoming things and resilience. And I think, a lot of youth would benefit from listening to elders, but I'm going to be honest, elders being honest and transparent about mistakes, losses, and how they pick themselves back up. For me, while I was raised to believe in history, if you can have heroes, whether they're in the home, outside of the home, finding a mentor, connecting with quotes, very important to hold on to, faith. These are things that are essential, and recognizing that as youth, we say we're our ancestors' wildest dreams. And so with that, when there's a connection to family history and ancestors, there's a purpose and an understanding that there's an after this season, after this challenge, after this loss. You can redeem yourself. You have a purpose, and it makes the story greater because, again, as Mr. Harris outlined, he learned a strategy of counting the votes that carried him into the next election, and he was victorious from then on. So I do think that youth are really struggling with needing role models. And I think the difference is role models that are transparent, really transparent. If it's not real, young people aren't going to listen.
Yeah. I wrote a book several years ago called Goodbye Arkadelphia. And I recommend that book for a number of reasons, and especially for those who may be considering corporate America, and for those who just have had difficulties in their life. Because the book really lays out in raw fashion my life in terms of my ups and my downs. And that's what a lot of younger people don't recognize, is that you may have apparent success today, but that did not come automatically. It came because of your unwillingness to give up. There have been many times, as you find out in the book, where an ordinary person would probably have said, "To hell with them. I'm giving up on this. I'm leaving this corporation. I'm doing this. I ain't gonna put up with this mess." But you have to understand that there is no easy road to success. Life is tough, and you have to be tough enough to deal with it. And you just can't just get mad and say they discriminating against me, and therefore ain't nothing I can do. Of course, there's something you can do. Always something you can do. And that's where I try to put a layout in my book, Goodbye Arkadelphia.
Before we answer this question, Mr. Harris, for those that missed out on the several times you've been on the show, and we appreciate every time you're on, I think what stood out to me, not just about excerpts from your book that you shared, but that discrimination often coincides with African Americans being great. So I'm recalling the efforts to get into certain classes in high school, and that the opposition in your day was not covert. You were often, again, thriving in the midst of very overt, racist, discriminatory opposition. And so I think, to make a plug for the book again, Where Youth Can Grow, is sometimes when we're not watered, we can wilt because we're not getting it from internally. I think young people could really grow with the understanding of see the discrimination and win anyway, and thrive anyway, and persevere anyway.
Absolutely. Douglas has heard me say this on many occasions. When I first came out from rural segregated Arkansas to Oakland Technical High School and encountered my very first day, a counselor who would not let me get into college prep courses. But I had a solution to that. My sister and her 6'4" husband. That husband went back with me the next day, and I got everything that I wanted. And he enjoyed just telling that white woman off.
Audience, if I gotta slip this in, that 6'4", 6'5" man that Mr. Harris is referring to is my father, Artist Blacksher Jr., who has been a beacon, a supporter, a staunch advocate for not only Mr. Harris here, aka Uncle Robert, but myself and many, many other young brothers in my community in which I grew up in. And I just want to give my father, Artist Blacksher Jr., that shout out, because he would stand up in a minute. And when you get a 6'5", 250-pound man saying that ain't right, that commands attention and a response that will get an answer that will catapult you ahead. Dr. Ashley, please.
Yes. So.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Harris. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say he sure scared the hell out of Mrs. Hilligus, the counselor. As a matter of fact, he enjoyed every moment of scaring her.
Wait a minute.
And I got my courses, obviously.
Wait a minute, Mr. Harris. He was more scared to go back home and tell his wife that he didn't get her brother in them class.
Well, Jean told him, your mother told him that he couldn't come back unless he got me into those classes. So he had no choice. And he did an excellent job of executing his assignment.
Dr. Ashley, please.
I love it. I love it. So, Mr. Harris, what do you think about the candidates that won for city council? So we have Janani Ramachandran Esquire and Kevin Jenkins. What do you think they'll need in their tool belt for as they assume these new positions?
Yeah, well, I have had contact with both. I know Kevin Jenkins quite well. He's sort of like a mentee now, and I've had him on my show several times. Janini, I've had her as well. I don't know her as well, but both are young and I think have enormous potential. So what we should be doing, and certainly I've seen it already start to happen, is getting behind them, giving them the support and encouragement that they need so that they can develop into the kind of city council persons here in Oakland that will make a difference. Kevin is representing District 6, I believe, and Janine is District 4, I believe. And they both have opportunities. And as far as I can see from talking with them, is that they are a new breed of people. And I think they're going to make a difference in Oakland. They're willing to listen to others, get advice, and then make their own decisions. And that's so critical. Get all of the advice that you can get. But the final decision, of course, will be theirs. And I think they will make sound decisions.
You know what, Mr. Harris, I thank you for sharing that, because audience, not here in Oakland, in the county of Alameda, in the state of California, but all across this nation, young people, I humbly ask that you get involved and seek wise counsel such as Mr. Harris, because we have a new generation that's going to be leading our elders, and that includes me. I'll be 60 years old very soon. And until we start passing the baton and the wisdom that goes with that baton, we are going to be a people that is in a deficit instead of in a surplus. So, Mr. Harris, I want to thank you for being over 59 years of wise counsel to your nephew here, Doug Blacksher, because I've been down quite a few times. But every time I think about you and read excerpts out of your book, The Rattlesnake in the Road, et cetera, I thought I didn't read it.
Rattlesnakes never sleep.
There you go.
Chapter's called, right.
But this wise man right here gives wise counsel to the young that's going to help propel our communities, our neighborhood, our city, our county, our state, and us nationally. So thank you, sir. Dr. Ashley, do you have another question, or is it my turn?
It's your turn. We want to hear about this plug. We hear there's a show that we want to hear more about.
Oh, it's called All About Community. I've been doing it now for 7 years on channel 78, RTV channel 78, Comcast, Xfinity. It brings on, we tape twice a month, but we bring in people from the community. I've had Pamela Price on, I've had Janini on, I've had Kevin on, I've had Shane Tao on.
You had me on.
Yeah, I had you on several years ago. And we've had a whole host of people, and it can be seen. Most of that it's uploaded to YouTube. It can be seen on the channel itself. as well as on demand on Fire Stick and other platforms. So it's easy to watch if you want to find out some good action. Matter of fact, the debate for the candidates here in Oakland. I had 4 of those candidates on during the last of October, and it was in a good platform. And you could hear, if you want to go to YouTube and hear them, you can go and hear what they have to say, and then hold them accountable, whoever won, for what they will deliver. But I thought it was a great debate among them.
Mr. Harris, what is your opinion of the ranked choice voting system, both pros and cons? Thank you, sir.
As I said before, the main reason that has been put forward is that it saves money. That has been the main reason. My own personal view is that I don't like ranked choice, not only because it's difficult for people to understand, because I believe that voters ought not have to spend a lot of time studying and trying to figure out algorithms and all this other stuff in order to vote. I think that voting ought to be easy and easily understood. Now, here in Oakland, what has happened is that we instituted a system and failed to educate the people as to how it worked. Now, if a majority of the people in Oakland really want ranked choice, fine, nothing wrong with that. That's a preference. But if a majority of people don't understand what it is that's going on, then you need to give serious consideration in the future for to changing the charter, to go back to the system that was there before ranked choice came. That is, you had a primary, people voted, and then you voted for whoever got through the primary and came up with a winner. So and I heard Allyssa, I thought did an excellent job of explaining the process, and clearly she favors ranked choice, which I have no problem with. But all I say is that it ought to be something that a majority of the people understand how it exists. And then once they understand that, if they want to keep it, no problem. If they want to get rid of it, no problem. Either way, the system can work. But I think it works better when it's like the county of Alameda, like Pamela Price and Terry Wiley. You know who you're voting for. You either go for that one or that one. Hey, and then you don't have to go through all this ranked choice. Let me say this: ranked choice had me voting for people I didn't even want, didn't like, and would have never voted for them had I had a choice. So ranked choice had taken away my choice. But that's just my views. And as a matter of fact, on the next segment of All About Community, my show, we will be talking about ranked choice.
Better get Allyssa Victory on there. Some of Victory's corner.
I will have her in the future. That's for certain, because again, she's very intelligent, very personable, and clearly has a bright future, not only in the legal profession, but in politics. I can see young people like that, and would encourage young people like that to really go out and make themselves available for public office. She would be excellent. And finally, I'd say on that is that no matter what, ranked choice or otherwise, those that got the money are those that are going to win. And it proved that in the mayoral race. The 2 candidates spending the most money, actually the 3 candidates spending the most money came in 1, 2, 3.
Dr. Ashley, as we wrap this up, do you have any last final questions for this amazing, outstanding, wise counsel, Mr. Harris, as we close this show out?
I think it's just putting it on your mind, Mr. Harris. I'm already thinking about when you're coming back. And so just planting the seed to have you come back and keep sharing with us. And that's my plug.
Anytime, just let me know.
Well, audience, before we let Mr. Harris go, Mr. Harris, I want to give you your accolades as I've talked to numerous of Black men and women who you have mentored, who have gone on to be successful representatives in our community, in our city, our county, and our state. What advice can you give before you leave today to gentlemen who don't want to let that baton go and share that wisdom and teach our next generation of how to be true leaders as you have been and continuously are? Thank you, sir.
Well, I was once told that old men and women are for counsel, young men and women are for war. So we will counsel them, but the warriors have to be the young people. And I'm willing to give them that opportunity, that counsel, so that they can be the warriors.
On that note, Mr. Harris, aka Uncle Robert, thank you for coming on the show. With you complimented Allyssa Victory's Victory Corner. We hope you have her on your show so that she can articulate and educate your audience on how ranked choice voting gives everyone an opportunity to be a leader, an elected leader in our community, specifically the African American community, Black community. Thank you, sir. And we look forward for you coming back on the show again. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Look forward to it.
All right. Well, Dr. Ashley, this has been a political powerhouse show today. I am going to go back over this show once we are off the air and write down all kind of notes. I was on that Alameda County Democratic Central Committee meeting for 4.5 hours.
Wow.
And we learned more in an hour and a half than I did in 4.5 hours. So can you give our announcements as we close out? Because I'm telling you, my brain is swelling. It's going boom, 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 boom. Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
Absolutely. What a powerful first show of the year. Audience, we and those who have social media, I want to share some accounts that we're following on Instagram to keep you informed with friends of the show and what they're doing in their respective communities. Some of these handles include, let's see, at Donnie Glover Official, at Urban Cowgirl Ranch _, at Creighton Davis. I have to get to at KinFolx Coffee. Got to get to that coffee shop when I come to town. We also have at slap.Bay Area, as well as at millennial.democrats, at Janani #4 Oakland, as well as at Shane for Oakland. Learn more about what our elected mayor is doing at Kevin _Jenkins 510 and at Victory for Oakland. So again, to visit those Instagram pages and find out what people are doing in their communities. Mr. Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News, we thank you for your continued support and mentorship in this space. Audience, we have sister shows that you can tune in to get informed. So there's Chapin Friends on Mondays, Party Marty Let's Talk on Tuesdays. There's also Titillating Tuesdays with Stacey Dennis. As well as the Blackout Live, 60 Minutes in Black USA with Michael Haney, as well as Mr. Donnie Glover, hosts a number of shows. BlackUSA.News Morning Show, Donnie Glover Show, People Over Politics, Political Cipher, Data Mall Sis, community connections, resources, and gardening. The Robert Report, shared space, frontline news. Tune in and find out more about what our sister shows are doing in 2023. Then we have some stories that are near and dear to our heart that we've been publicizing that we want to keep you abreast of. That includes, so first and foremost, Happy New Year. And again, we have Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday coming up this month. We have the story and the hashtag Stand with Carlton of Raleigh, NC 2022. And again, we have an update regarding Driving While Black, Michael Thrash, Taylor County TX. The next trial date is February 27th, 2023. So again, keep tuning in so that we can provide updates and prayerfully Mr. Thrash will be victorious in his repeated efforts to acquire the justice he deserves.
Audience, Happy New Year's. We pray and hope that you continue to watch our show as we educate our audience, not only just business, but how politics affect business, community, and the Black and African American people in the United States of America. Thank you for joining us today. We return Thursday, January 12th, with Council Member Kevin Jenkins. And quickly, we have Ray Bobbitt coming back. We have Trent Willis coming back. We have the school board supervisor, Mike Hutchinson, coming on the show to talk about his third place win to his first place win, the third place loss to the first place win. We look forward to seeing you every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time and the BlackUSA.News Network, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. And remember, together, wait a minute, hold on, let me get to the right side. Together, even adversaries, at the end of the day, they come together. We can listen, we can learn, and we can share. Because I know you care. In 2023, I know you care. This is Doug Blacksher and Dr. Ashley Coleman of the Black Business Roundtable. God bless. We appreciate you. Good night.
Stay safe in the rain, audience. Be careful.